there, so let's talk about Dutch pours. They're one of the techniques in the fluid art world. They can have a distinct petal look to them. They can create beautiful cells or lacing. I personally like them because they tend to feel elegant and contemporary. I plan to do a tutorial on an ocean or beach Dutch pour, so subscribe and click the notification bell to see when that gets posted. So typically a Dutch pour is a layer of base paint, and then your colors poured in strips and then blown out with a hairdryer. There are other ways to blow out the paint too. The hairdryer gets the biggest petal or surface coverage. You can also do smaller petals by blowing out with a straw or your mouth. So here's a picture of one of my very first Dutch pours. It was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. So I wanted to share some of my notes I've learned along the way. So much plays into a Dutch pour depending on what you're going for. So let's talk about styles first. I think the most common one that comes to mind, at least for me, is the big petals with the negative space. It's gorgeous and beautiful. I tend to blow mine out to the edge, leaving little to no negative space, which I like it, so it works great for me. So I start with the big petals, but then I see pockets of paint under the white and I can't help myself. I want to see that color underneath. So I blow it out, and I use this too when I have an area I don't like because of either a color there or composition. So here's a comparison of big petals with negative space and the same painting with the big petals blown out to the edge. And this one I call the betta fish style. So you start with big petals, but then you manually blow out thin strips and still leave that negative space. It looks like a betta fish tail to me. Also, direction in which the paint is blown out is a huge part of the technique, and that plays a big role in the style that you're going for also. So I'll show you some examples. Here's my first one again. No plan, absolutely zero plan on direction. I just threw the paint down and was like, here's a Dutch pour, and went every which way. It got chaotic really quick. And with this one, it's straight line across with alternating petals. And here it is along a straight line, and the petals are alternating directions and at angles. And here's the betta fish again, and what I used for this one was a starburst direction. So out to each end first, then 4 angles from the center. In my ocean Dutch pours I was talking about, I used the direction from one side to leave negative space on the other side. Also a note on these ocean Dutch pours, I use a double Dutch blowout. So I blow out my first round of paint, and then I pour again along the same edge and stop shorter to get more variation in color. So lots of directions you can go. It's good to experiment and see what you like. Now for technique. This isn't a tutorial, but it is important to note parts of the process that can affect the look of your painting. A big lesson with Dutch pour I learned, less is more. You can quickly move from elegance to chaos, and this goes for how much paint you use, how many directions you go, how many times you blow out the same paint or petals. So some might like the chaos look. Again, it depends on what you're going for. An example of less is more that I have found is that you have roughly 2 blowouts on your colors before they start getting stretched and jagged. Overworking the blowouts will muddy the paint and possibly stretch out any pretty cells you have at the end of your petals. Here's an example. Now this is a very large canvas, 24 inch by 36 inch. I wanted a big canvas so I could get the negative space in the big petals. Well, I blew it out the first time. It didn't look great compositionally, so I decided to blow them out to the edge. And that was such a large space to cover. The colors got this jagged look, and the colors mellowed or muddied the more they were blown out so far. In my first painting, it wasn't the distance that the petals had to travel, it was just that I kept blowing the paint around. And even though it was a small canvas, the amount of times I kept using the hairdryer just stretched and muddied it. So another factor in how Dutch pours turn out is the order that the color strips are layered before they're blown out. For instance, these two use the exact same color palette, but the color strips were layered differently, and so the end result was pretty different from each other. Paint consistency is really important in Dutch pours. I did a little experiment here. This side I mixed up some colors on the thicker end of the paint consistency scale, and as you can see, the colors have a really hard time moving. They don't glide as easily, they just kind of get stuck, and sometimes you can get a jagged effect with that thicker paint. So the thicker paint might prevent you from getting that elegant petal look that you were going for, just because it just can't move as freely. On this side, I have colors on the very thin end of the paint consistency scale. The thing with thinner paint is that you can get some really pretty lacing or cells, but there's a pretty good chance your paints are either going to sink below the white and seem to disappear, or there's going to be a lot of movement with the thinner paints, like it'll just run off the canvas. This shot was taken 45 minutes after I poured it, so you can see a lot of movement. So it's really important to find a good balance of paint consistency. Speaking of, I have a tutorial coming out soon of my ocean Dutch pours. I'll have a really good visual of the paint consistency you'll want to look for when pouring a Dutch pour. Thanks for watching this guide. I hope it gives someone out there a little bit of a head start on their Dutch pouring journey. Bye for now!